We spend a lot of time obsessing over where we have been. But do we know where we are going? Or why? Set your own course. Know your mission, see your vision, live your strategy. Be purposed.
Anybody like chips? Yeah, Jason does. Hoover, yeah, me too. Anyone have this as like a real secret kind of guilty pleasure? No? Anyone have it as a way out there, everyone knows about it? So, I'm trying to lose weight. I have been for 46 years. Yeah, I came out of the womb chunky. And I'm told the portion control is important. So, the other day, I went to the cupboard, I grabbed a small bowl, one of Paxton's little baby bowls, and I said, okay, I'm just gonna put enough in there for one small portion, which is great, good idea, right? Got my little portion, came back in the living room, watching a movie. I said to my wife, look, portion control. She said, great, way to go, babe. Ate my chips. 30 seconds later, I think it's time for another portion, don't you? So the good news is I got a lot of exercise as I walked back and forth 6 times from the kitchen, but I had portion control. I learned that day that it's good to have a strategy if you want to accomplish a goal like portion control, but you have to also live it. It's good to have a strategy, but you have to live it out. You have to see it happen. Now, over the past 2 weeks, we've talked about knowing your mission, seeing your vision, and today I want to talk about living your strategy. Now, this is where it usually falls apart for many. Setting goals is great. Setting goals can be sometimes easy, but living out our strategy, well, that's where it all falls apart. I was looking at successful people the other day, and I found out that there's a common denominator among a lot of successful people. And by successful, I mean rich people, famous people, depending on how you determine success, right? And I came back to this Instagram post by Mark Wahlberg. You know Mark Wahlberg? Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch? Yeah? And or Wahlburgers, I guess he's got a restaurant chain, Transformers guy. Okay, so he posted this. I'm spitting chips everywhere. Bad idea to start your sermon eating chips. But I highly recommend Loads of Sour Cream, okay, by President's Choice. Excellent kind of chip. He posted this on his Instagram. His day starts at 2:30 a.m. 2:30 a.m. But the more surprising thing is he starts with a half hour of prayer, which I did not expect from the entourage guy, right? Not at all. So he starts at this time of day, and then he goes through, he's got his workout, he's got his meals and everything. He's a guy who's really, really determined to get things done, and he starts at 2:30 a.m., and I think he goes to bed around 8:30. So I looked at some other guys. Tim Cook, he gets up at 3:45. He's the CEO of Apple, right? Michelle Obama, she's got to get up at 4:30 to tone those arms, and she does a lot of good stuff in her community. Jack Dorsey, do you know who Jack Dorsey is? The scruffy guy's co-founder of Twitter, so very highly successful gentleman. He gets up at 5:30, and so there's a common denominator among these successful people. So I'm thinking, why don't we all just decide right now that from now on, we'll all get up at 2:30 a.m., and we'll all be successful CEOs by the end of the week. I love it. I love it. Actually, I have been trying to get up a little bit earlier because I'm not a morning person, and I have found that it has helped me achieve a few goals, getting up early. For me, that's, 5:30, 6 o'clock, not 2:30 in the morning. It's not just that easy, though, is it? Like, just getting up early in the morning isn't going to solve all your problems. It's not going to make you rich overnight, and it's not going to do everything for you that you want to do. That's a goal, but you need a plan. You need a vision You need a strategy. Most visions collapse because they lack a strategy. You see the future that you'd like for yourself, but you just never quite kind of get to that point where you develop a plan to get there. If you're going to lose weight or quit smoking or learn a language or get a degree or start a business, you need a strategy. So, last week we talked about seeing your vision, developing a vision for your life. So let me ask you, after that sermon, were you able to develop a vision for your life? Did that sermon completely revolutionize who you are? Yeah, it did. Kyle's looking at me going, yeah, man, before that sermon, nothing. Now my life's on an upward track. Okay, but if it did spark something within you, that's amazing. And if it didn't, if you struggled to have a vision, then I think I want to remind you that the first step of the process towards developing a strategy for your life is at least knowing where you're going, right? Because unless you know where you're going, you're never going to figure out how you're going to get there. So before you do anything else, you just at least need to have a vision for who you want to be and where you want to go. And I know it's absurdly simple, right? Just setting a goal is the easiest thing you can do, but it's also the most fundamental thing that you need to do. Now, your vision really is nothing more than a picture of the future. I see a vision as is wresting control away from the past and saying, this is what my God-called future is going to look like. Now, that's all of last week's sermon in a nutshell. Now, if you find this overwhelming, I want to make a quick suggestion for you, and that is simply to break things down into smaller goals. If developing a full vision for your life is difficult, then just start developing some smaller goals, heading in the direction you want to go. Like I was feeling bad the other day about the future, feeling pretty down. Then I installed a new version of Office, and I have to tell you, it improved my outlook.
Alton, you really excel at those kind of jokes.
I feel like you had that one loaded in the chamber. Let me share with you my vision, okay? My personal vision. And this isn't, again, the chips, bad idea. This isn't going to be like every single goal that I have, but these are my big overarching goals. This is who I see myself being in the future and who I'm working towards. Number one, I want to be a good dad. And to me, that means being available for my kids, providing for my kids, training my kids, communicating love to my kids. That's one of the big things that I want to be now and for the rest of my life, is a good dad. I want to be a good husband. And honestly, I think I might struggle at that one a little more. It doesn't come quite as easy as being a good dad sometimes, but I want to put in the work to communicate, to be transparent, to be open, to be patient, to be loving and kind with my wife. That's a big goal of mine. I want to lead people to Jesus. Ever since my baptism when I was 17, it's been a number one thing for me that I just had such a profound change in my life when Jesus came into my life. I want to share that with other people. Not to make them think like I do and not to rescue them from eternal damnation, although I'm sure that's a great side effect, but simply because I love Jesus so much and I want other people to have that experience. I want to help people grow in their faith because I see a lot of people, they come to Christ and then they kind of stagnate. They stop there, right? They're kind of spiritual infants. And I think they find that really frustrating. I would find that extremely frustrating to come to faith in Jesus and then never keep going down that path of development and in that relationship. I want to be emotionally healthy. And this isn't a goal that I've always had. In fact, I was never even really aware that this should be a goal of mine, but over maybe the last 5 or 6 years, I've said, yeah, There are things in my life that I need to do to make sure that I am emotionally healthy. And for me, a big reason I want to be emotionally healthy is because there are so many broken people around me that how can I help them if I can't even help myself? So it's like that airplane thing, right? You put your own mask on, and then you can take care of the person beside you. That's something I want to do. I want to be physically healthy, and I'll tell you, out of all of them, this for me is one of the biggest struggles because, again, the chips. But, I've got kids that are growing up, and I'm starting to realize that at some point, I'm going to have grandkids. And I want to be able to play with them and have the energy to build stuff with them and go on hikes with them, right? So I want to be healthy. I want to live with integrity. I spend a lot of time thinking about my choices and my actions and whether I'm living with integrity. Does what I say match up to what I do? And I don't always hit the mark all the time, but it's really important that I'm always striving towards that mark. And I want to be creative. For me, if there's not some kind of creativity in my life, then I'm just not a happy or healthy person. And I feel like God made us creative for a reason, and I want to see that happen. So whether that's preaching, which is a creative process, right? Or whatever it might be, making a little video before the sermon, whatever that is, I want to make sure that I'm creative. So you see how all of these kind of small goals, they add up to a big vision, right? So if you're struggling to find a vision for your life, then start looking at the things that are important to you, the things that you'd like to be, that if you added them all up down the road, that would be the vision for your life. Now, you might notice that I didn't put on here, I want to be the pastor of a church of 600 people, and I want to make a certain amount of money, and I want to live in a certain city or town. Because for me, that's less important than the overall goal of leading people to Jesus and helping them grow, right, in their faith. So I don't even know what 5 years down the road that looks like, but I know I'll be doing it, right? I don't know specifically what it looks like, but I know I'll be leading people to Jesus wherever I am. So that's me. It's important, folks, to begin with setting goals. When I wanted to become a pastor, when God said, become a pastor, I came out of a non-Christian home. I had no idea what it even really meant to be a pastor, let alone how to become one. And yet God was clear that that's where I was to be headed. So I set the goal. I didn't have a plan at that point, but I started with the goal. And from there on, God was able to allow me to develop a strategy to get there. Now, every year, my wife, Nikki, and I, we sit down in January, and we get the kids out of the room. We spend some time talking about our goals for the year. We talk about our plans for the future. Are we working for or against our vision for what our marriage is going to be and who we're going to be as people and who we want our kids to be as people? So we're constantly reevaluating our goals and our strategy to get there. Now, once you have your goal, it's time to develop a strategy. And that is because a goal without a plan, well, that's just a wish, isn't it? So I want to give you a 7-step plan to develop a 7-step plan. Does that sound good? All right, here we go. Buckle in. Number 1, plan, and then plan some more. There's very little chance of achieving your goals without planning. There's almost no chance unless you happen to it by random luck. Goal achievement requires ample planning so that you know the direction that you're traveling. Now, this doesn't mean that you need to know every single step in the process, okay? Think about an airplane. An airplane knows that it needs to leave city A and get to city B or C or D, and it knows generally what time it's supposed to leave and what time it's supposed to arrive. They call it a flight plan. But all along the way, if you've ever traveled, you know that there are adjustments to the plan depending upon weather and conditions and the other airport, what's going on there. There's always small adjustments. So set a plan, but don't be afraid to make course corrections along the way. Always be looking at your plan and determining whether your plan is meeting your needs right now in this moment, or if the context has changed, if things have changed. So you need to commit to a plan, but you also need to leave room and flexibility. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Now, another piece of advice when it comes to making plans, and this is where I see so many people getting stuck, is to focus on the vision, not on the obstacles. Because so many times, I can't tell you over the last 25 years how many meetings I've been in where we've said, we have a vision to do this. And then all of a sudden, you get the dreaded yeah, but. You know the yeah, but? Like, we have a vision to go and start this new ministry. Yeah, but what about this obstacle? Yeah, but what about this hurdle? Yeah, but have you thought about this? And while all of those things are important, if you focus on the obstacles, all you see is what? Obstacles. Obstacles are those frightful things you see when you take your eye off the goal. I have to think that now, soccer was not my thing, okay? When I played soccer, I sat in the dirt and I made mud piles, but I was also 4, so give me a break. And I have to think that when they're running down the pitch, they're not focused on the players around them. They're focused on the goal and getting that ball into the goal, right? As soon as you take your eyes off of the goal, off of the vision for your life, as soon as you start spending more time thinking about the obstacles, well, how do you move beyond them? Because then you end up moving towards them. When I was in driver's ed, when I was 16 years old, and they had Young Drivers of Canada, I took the courses over my birthday, over Christmas break, because my birthday is December 20th, and I turned 16, and I wanted my license as soon as I could get it, and you didn't have to wait back then. And I remember spending my miserable 5 days at driver's ed training over Christmas break. One of the biggest things they said was, most people focus on the road just 5 feet in front of them. But you need to look down the road. You need to keep your eyes down the road. Because it does a couple of things. Number one, it keeps you centered in your lane and it keeps you moving where you need to go. You ever see someone going like this in their lane? They're probably not looking far enough down the road. And then it also helps you see problems before they get to you. You can anticipate them and course correct. So, focus on the vision, not on the obstacles. Number 2, it's so easy to get distracted in life. There's so many things that creep up in our lives that can become distractions, pulling us away from our vision. We have things that veer us off course, one tangent or another. But you know what? These distractions, they don't help us achieve our goals. They pull us away from our goals. So take a good look at your life. Maybe even make a list. What are the things in my life that are helping me achieve my goals? And on the other side, you may not want to do this, but what are the things in my life that are not? What are distractions? Now, I think it's okay to have a few distractions. It's okay to sit down and binge watch Netflix once in a while. But if that's all you do, you'll never see your goals happen. For me, a big thing is clutter. I need to keep nice, tidy spaces because I have an undiagnosed attention disorder. And so I need to have everything where it needs to be and nice and tidy. I need to have no distractions. But what are those distractions for you? It could be excessive socializing or channel surfing. It could be social media or Netflix. It could be any number of time wasters. By removing those distractions from your life, it frees up more time to pursue your goals rather than focusing on the things that don't matter a whole lot. Number 3, celebrate milestones. Now, milestones are helpful markers that can help you create, that you create on your route to your goals. You know, when we go to Florida, my wife plots out our trip, and she sets certain stopping points along the way, certain markers. And at that point, we'll know, okay, well, we're this far down the road. We're this far down the road. We're staying at this hotel that's conveniently right beside a Target. There's always a Target. My wife loves Target. If you struggle to achieve a certain goal that seems too big, too momentous for you, then break it up into milestones. Break it up into smaller pieces. Create monthly or weekly milestones that help you stay on track. In other words, take your goal and break it down into something smaller. So if you want to lose 60 pounds in 1 year, that sounds almost impossible. Trust me, that sounds almost impossible. But that's 5 pounds a month, which, if you break that down, is 1.25 pounds a week. Which, you know, if you're fit and you're toned, maybe that's a lot for you. But if you're someone like me, that's more than achievable with some small change in diet. Not eating chips during your sermon. Let's say you want to read the Bible in 1 year. You ever had that goal? Ever been intimidated? Said, like, I would love to read through the whole Bible. I'll do it in 1 year, 365 days. Well, that's difficult. Now, if there's 1,189 chapters in the Bible divided by 365 days, any guesses what that is? No? Yeah, I wouldn't guess either. 3.2 chapters a day. Randy got it? Good for you. You can do math. I can do theology. I can't do math. 3.2 chapters a day. Let's say it takes you 5 minutes to read a chapter. That's 15 minutes a day. That's all. That's it. 20 once or twice a week to get caught up on that point 2. You see, our big goals look so unachievable until we start breaking them down. Maybe your goal is to have a healthier marriage. What are some of the smaller goals that you can set for yourself along the way, right? That can help you get there. Milestones are more manageable because they help us see the short-term results that lead to our long-term outcomes. And I said celebrate milestones. Don't just set them, but celebrate them. I think it's important every time you get to one of these markers that you say, you know what? I'm pretty amazing. Look what I did. I read 3.2 chapters of the Bible today, and I did it yesterday. I'm going to do it again tomorrow. I think that's amazing. Celebrate that. You know, Israel did this all the time. All the time. Read the Hebrew Scriptures. What were they always doing? And you read it and you go, why the heck were they doing this? They had something important happen in a location, and what did they always do? They piled up a bunch of rocks. I kid you not, read through the Old Testament, they were always making piles of rocks. And they did it to mark the occasion, to celebrate it, to say, whenever we walk by this pile of rocks, we will remember what God did. Whether that pile of rocks was an altar, where they sacrificed a calf for what God has done and celebrated and had a big feast, or whether it was just simply a mound of rocks on a mountaintop. They were celebrating that milestone in their relationship with God. Oh, number 4. You know what? We'll get to it later. Procrastination is the silent killer of your vision. It really is. It affects everyone near and far. But letting procrastination overcome you can result, it just, what does it do? It just holds you back. It slows everything down. It keeps you from achieving your goals, seeing your vision. And for some of us, this is easy to overcome. Some of us are type A people. We just burst through every barrier. We don't have a problem with procrastination. For some of us, this is really difficult, especially if it's tasks we don't want to do, okay? So I want to suggest to you the 15-minute rule. Do you know the 15-minute rule? It's as simple as this. If there's something that you've been putting off that you don't want to do, then set a timer. Say, Alexa, set a timer for 15 minutes. But I sure hope there's some people with their speakers on watching this online. Set a timer for 15 minutes, and then go do that thing for 15 minutes. That thing you hated. Whether it's cleaning out the basement, just do it for 15 minutes, or cleaning out the garage, or organizing your taxes, or filing those receipts, or making those phone calls, whatever they are. Set a timer and do it for 15 minutes. And you know what you'll find? That you'll end up be doing it for 2 or 3 hours because you realize it really wasn't that bad to begin with, and that it felt good to accomplish something you really didn't want to do, right? And hey, if at the end of 15 minutes Alexa goes off, then you can quit and say, I did my 15 minutes, and I feel good about that. I'm 15 minutes further down the road than I was before. And how many of us have small, little, tiny jobs that are always at the back of our head, things left undone that we know need to be done, and you could probably do them in 15 minutes or maybe half a day? We've been talking about painting the bathroom for 10 years now. The bathroom is half the size of this stage. It's tiny. It's a sink and a toilet. And we've been putting it off. Probably take us half a day. One day we'll do it. We'll feel so good. All right. Number 5, we're getting down to the end. Number 5, your early mitts. Have you ever heard of your early mitts? M-I-T-S. These are your most important tasks. Do them first thing in the morning. Get them done right away. The things that are most important, get them done and off your plate. Prioritize your time that you get those things off your plate right away. When I was working when I was in high school, I had a teacher who worked in the trades. He was an electrician. He taught an electrical class. He was an amazing guy, Mr. McKnight, and he was one of the guys who actually led me to go into ministry, gave me the courage and the confidence as a mentor and an electrical teacher to go into ministry. Because I was kind of a little rough around the edges before I came to Christ at the age of 16, and he knew me pretty well. So, he always talked about do the most important tasks on the job first thing in the morning. He said, because your workers have the most energy in the morning, you have the most energy in the morning. He says, you will get 2/3 of the job done by lunch, and the last third from lunch till 5 o'clock. And as a guy who worked in the trades, he oversaw building the CN Tower. He knew what he was talking about. He managed a lot of people. So those important things to you, do them first thing in the morning, your most important tasks. Now, Mark Twain talked about this. He called them our frogs. And he said this: if it's your job to eat a frog, it's best to do it first thing in the morning. And if it's your job to eat 2 frogs, it's best to eat the biggest one first. And I think that's great advice. Twain was referring to the MITs that we all have in a given day, right? So focus your morning on achieving those early mitts as best as you can. Now, number 6, anticipate failure. You are going to fail. Now, I know that sounds like the opposite of a motivational speech where they say you can do anything. And maybe you can. I don't know. But on your way to doing anything, there's going to be a lot of failure. And that failure can be crippling if you don't expect it. If you expect to be perfection and see all of your dreams come true and to never fail, that could be devastating. But I have to tell you, there's so many failures in my life that turned out to be blessings. Whether I learned something from them or they led me to a better opportunity or whatever it was, expect to fail. And it's okay. Because our failures, they become stepping stones on the way to success. I know that sounds so trite. That should be a meme on Instagram. But it's true. Sometimes trite things are true. I'm sure you're all familiar with the Ford Motor Company, Henry Ford, right? I've got a Ford Bronco Sport in the parking lot. One of the most successful businessmen of his day, but he actually had 2 failed companies before he started this one that we know today. In 1899, at the age of 36 years old, Ford formed his first company. It was called the Detroit Automobile Company, and it was backed by, at the time, a famous lumber baron, William H. Murphy. And so with his genius, right, and the financial backing of this lumber baron, you'd think it was a success. But it wasn't. It failed within a year. The company went bankrupt. So in 1901, not a lot longer, he formed the Henry Ford Company, which, of course, it too ended. And it became known as the Cadillac Automobile Company later down the road. It wasn't until his third try, the Ford Motor Company, that he hit the proverbial nail on the head. And so now we know the story, right? We know what happened. Ford revolutionized the automotive industry. He pioneered not only the Model T and the assembly line, but also the concept, the notion that a car could be in everyone's driveway, in everyone's home. And it's because of him that driving became a thing. And subsequently, the Ford Model T went on to sell over 17 million units. Now just think about that in the early 1900s and what that would have taken. When you anticipate failures, you can expect them and you can use them as stepping stones, not allowing them to deaden your spirit as you work towards achieving your goal. Now, as we close, I got to say something spiritual. We are in a church after all. And that is pray, pray, and pray some more. Pray some more. I think that prayer is really, really important when it comes to developing a strategy because it centers you on what is right. It centers you on the important things in life. And it says, this is my vision, but God, it is also your vision for me, and it keeps you lane that you need to be heading. I also think it gives you strength because if you set goals and you develop a strategy, you need strength along the way. Whether that's the strength to deal with failures that arise or the strength to get up at 2:30 in the morning or whatever that strength is that you need, prayer is a vehicle for strength. And I think that prayer brings wisdom. When we open up ourselves to let God speak into our lives, well, He has the wisdom of the ages at His disposal. And so we seek His wisdom in prayer. I love this Bible verse in Ephesians, specifically the Message version. It's in Christ that we find out who we are and what we're living for. Long before we first heard of Christ and got our hopes up, He had His eye on us, had designs on us for glorious living. Part of the overall purpose He is working out in everything and everyone. God has a plan and a purpose for your life. He wants to have a hand in your mission, your vision, and helping you live out your strategy. And honestly, a vision that doesn't involve Christ, at least for the believer, isn't a whole lot better than Adam and Eve's vision to become like God. Because wanting to become like God means I can do whatever I want with no input from my Creator. And how did that work out for them? But when we surrender our lives to Christ and our wills to Christ, what do? We align our will with His. And we align our vision with His. And I have to tell you, church, that when you align your vision and your goals and your life with His vision for you and your life, there are supernatural resources available to you that you will not believe. You will not believe. I don't know if you've ever heard of William Tyndale. Ever heard of this guy? I went to Tyndale Bible College and Seminary. It was Ontario Bible College and Seminary. They renamed it after this guy. Well, at the time, when I don't know if you noticed the dates, but I think he's 42. Like, he's younger than me there. He looks like he's 83. Anyway, so William Tyndale lived in a time where they only had the Latin Bible. The church said you can only read the Latin Bible, but a lot of people spoke other languages. Now, Martin Luther at this time was translating the Bible into German, which was against the law. And William said, there's a whole lot of people who speak English. I want to translate the Bible into English. He was a Bible scholar. He read it in Greek and Hebrew, and he loved the Word of God. And he said, nobody can read it because nobody speaks Latin except for the clergy. And what happens when the clergy have control over the Bible and no one else can fact check it? It becomes Fox News of the religious world, right? You can just say whatever you want. And it was punishable by death to translate it into English, if you can believe it. And so he went on and he produced the first English New Testament that came from the Hebrew scriptures and the Greek scriptures, the original languages. He was the first to use the printing press to mass produce it as well. And in 1535, he was convicted of heresy for doing so. And he was killed a year later for it. Unfortunately, sadly, he was killed for it by strangulation, which is pretty terrible, and then they burned his body. That's how much they wanted to set an example of someone who wanted to bring the Word of God to the masses in a language they could read, to keep control of power. He had a vision he was willing to give his life for, a vision that has changed the world. His translation shaped the New King James Version. So 83% of Tyndale's words in the New Testament are in the King James Version, and 76 in the Old. A lot of people don't know that. He had a big vision. He set many goals along the way. He did it in the strength of God. And yeah, it turned out pretty bad in the end, but I can guarantee you he has no regrets. Because in 2002, BBC said he was number 26 on the list of all the greatest Britons. Just a few back from David Beckham. You know, folks, it's amazing, absolutely astounding, what you can accomplish when you know your mission, when you have a clear vision, and when you not only set a strategy, but you live it out each and every single day. Let's pray.